Hey guys, welcome to another video here with me, Coach Matt. Today we're going to be discussing a little bit of endgame technique. We're also going to be discussing how the knight is better in the closed position and the bishop, as we probably know from the past, is better in the open positions. All right, so let's get right into it. Here we have the sort of standard minor piece endgame. Remember, guys, minor piece, small, minus small. Minor pieces being the knights and the bishops. So as we know, the knight is always going to be better in the closed position, and that's because the knight can slowly sort of maneuver himself into little squares, whereas the bishop is a long-range traveler, can travel great distance in quick time. But as you can see, this dark squared bishop here is very, very tied in because all black's pawns on the dark squares, keeping that bishop sort of locked in and without possibility of escaping actually in this position. So if you look at it, we've got one pass pawn. This looks pretty juicy. Strongly considering pushing this pawn. That would certainly be a mistake, though. I think if black were to play e2, it's very easy for white to just play king f2, scooping up the pawn, and then that's a potential queen down the drain. So another thing worth touching on there is pass pawns are all potential queens, guys. These have the ability of promoting and winning us the game, quite honestly. So needs to be looked after with great care. What are we going to do here? That's really what this topic of discussion is all about. How are we gonna win this game, really? And as usual, in game, you need to activate your king. So I mean, nobody would fault you for trying to get your king as far up the board as possible to control as many squares. I think the other very important one there is that your king stops their king from entering the position. So it's kind of like, especially in king and pawn endgames, we see this all the time, where the two kings sort of race. They race towards the center of the board, and whoever's king gets there first controls more squares, and therefore generally controls the outcome of how the position is going to unfold. So nobody would fault you, like we said, for running your king up the board. There's a very nice opportunity here that black has, and that's sort of maneuvering the knight into a key position. And we're going to talk about that in a moment's time. So here's our knight, very inactive. He's still there on the sort of starting block. He probably moved out and moved back at some stage. But these are the two target pawns that we want to get to. Remember, guys, you've got to try and identify a target. We've addressed this before, that you want to attack, and then go for that as quickly as possible. So there's two ways. Mainly, if the knight wants to hit these pawns, he needs to get here, and then he will be attacking both of these pawns at the same time. And really, that's the only effective way for him to do this. How did he get to c5? Well, that's really the question. He's got two options here. He can go a6, c5, go that way. He can go d7, c5. And all these little arrows pointing us exactly where we want to go. I'm going to go d7. I'm going to keep it traditional. Knight's heading towards the center. That's where the knight wants to go. Let's go king f3. He's going to come this way to try and help his position. Knight c5, king e2. Defending the one pawn. I think this one's more important for them as well as white, because if this pawn drops, then I'd have two passed pawns, and who knows, the possibilities might be endless. However, this one drops, which means this a4 pawn is probably dropping as well. The bishop, no moves. So this is really a horrible spot for white. Knight c5, again, attacking both of these pawns. King c2, defending d3. So I'm just going to be greedy, as I always recommend to you guys as well. I'm going to grab this a4 pawn, and I'm just going to continue doing that. You see the lights, or the white bishop just absolutely tied down here. Nothing that they can do. I'm going to go bishop c1 just to avoid black trading off. I think if, let's say, king c1, again, you can't go e2 because of king d2. He catches the pawn. But what black could do is just grab the bishop. Again, you want to trade off when you're ahead. This is a standard rule. And now the king is suddenly too far from the square. So when I play e2, I'm promoting unstoppably. And, well, that'll be the game. Game over. So let's continue with our original analysis. Bishop c1. I'm going to bring this knight back so that I can start to mobilize these pawns. I'm going to go knight c5. Everything's tied up. Everything's defended. I'm cool. He can't get in. He's stuck. He needs to look after this pawn. I'm just going to move up and down with this bishop because the king needs to defend here. Otherwise, of course, I'm happy to grab it. I will be greedy, and I will happily take that pawn off the board. I'm going to go a4, and the plan is to just go a3. Bishop here. I'm going to go a3. Can't stop me from going a3. I'm covering this square. And the white pieces are just running out of moves, quite honestly, here. He's just absolutely stuck. Anywhere the bishop moves, it's lost. He'll just take it. Simple as that. I'm now going to go king here just because I can't find any better moves. I have the option to grab, but I'm going to do the slow burn here. Not really. It's actually the fastest route to victory. b3 followed by b2 followed by, well, either promoting or grabbing the bishop. Very, very difficult. I think he's going to go king c1 to try and make it, put up the best possible resistance. b2. I can see that if I go b2 here, again, slow and steady, guys. Always in these end games, the slow and steady approach is by far the best approach. You don't need to rush into these positions. You don't need to take any risks. You want to opt for the options that are the safest and that you're not taking any chances. You just want a nice, smooth, easy sailing victory. So the bishop's going to take, the pawn's going to take, the king's going to take. And then the king is going to be too far away, so I'm just simply going to push the pawn. And then next move, I'm going to push the pawn again. And voila, I will have promoted. And from there, well, it should be a very smooth sailing victory. So I did this like this on purpose. I want you guys to start getting in the habit of thinking a few moves ahead. And just try and visualize the position unfolding in your head. It will certainly help you a lot with your analysis. Let's see how it works. So bishop takes, pawn takes, king takes. As we said, e2 happening, and there's no way of stopping me. King c2. I have promoted. Now, again, formulate a plan. What's the fastest way to victory? I could checkmate you with the queen and the knight. I could waltz the king into the game somehow, maybe like this sort of route, and use the king and the queen and checkmate. Nobody would fault you for doing that. But for me, the easiest one is the ladder. I've always enjoyed the ladder. I know you guys love the ladder as well. I'm just going to promote this pawn, and I'm going to ladder it up. Nice and easy. So, okay. White's move first, king b2, check. Guys, we're going to keep an eye out for stalemates. Very, very important. Always be on the lookout for stalemate. Make sure that this guy has a square. So I'm like, if I'm going to eat this pawn, does he have some squares? He's got some squares. It's cool. So check here. Has he got a square? He does. It's cool. I can push. I can push. Ooh, I'm glad it sort of worked out like this because you've got to be careful. I get a rook or a queen here, cover this square, and it'll be stalemate. So the last thing I want to do is this. I'm just going to L-shape him and force him to move into the corner. Nice and easy. Then I'm going to get a rook. Yeah, still not clear. Oh, there is a mate in one. I'm going to touch on the traditional ladder. I will just move the rook away. Then the king has to go up, and then I mate him. But there is a nice little mate in one here just to finish it off. It's check. You cannot escape the check, and it's mate. All right, let's just get back to this position and touch on the start. Guys, we spoke about how the knight is superior in the closed positions, and now he has the ability to maneuver himself into tight little areas where the bishop focusing more on the long diagonal. So he needs an open position in order to thrive, the bishop, whereas he's closed up here, and he just really wasn't able to get into the game at all. We also touched on the fact that in games, make sure the king is used. It becomes probably the most important piece in just about any endgame situation. So make sure you remember that and you use your king in your endgames. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope you've been practicing your chess. Take care of yourselves and until next time, goodbye.